Hi all. Again, following day, another announcement. I just finished grading the industrial corn analysis essay, and I wanted to give everyone some feedback. These are things that I saw on a lot of essays. I did make some comments on everybody's essay. Um, so again, if you didn't get the grade you wanted, listen to this, look at your comments. If you have more questions, please, send me an email or we can talk in office hours. Um, but yeah, I want to go over some things that I saw a lot of. So the first thing, try to submit your documents in Word. PDFs work too. They're fine. I can view them, but Google Docs, I can't view in SpeedGrader, and that's how I grade is within Canvas. It just makes it easier, but I can't view that. I can't view pages. So yeah, the best thing to do is use Word or PDF if you have to. That works also. Everyone who's a student at Skyline and a lot of other schools, you can access Word for free. And you actually do it through Word, so you can look it up. Free college Word, and Google it, and you'll go. There's a page that Word has, and you just enter your email for your institution, and if they have that deal with Microsoft, then you can use Word for free through the school. Okay, so I recommend using that because it's the standard for schools for academics. Okay. The next thing, so for the assignment, make sure you're reading the assignment instructions carefully. I do lay out all of this stuff I'm going to be going over, and make sure you're reading pages, that are informational about writing, the quotations pages, the format pages, all that stuff, so you can get it down. Okay, but the first thing about the essays, when you write the title of an essay, and I know on the assignment I didn't really specify this, I usually do on my assignment pages, so I need to add that to that one. But make your own title. Don't title your essay Industrial Corn Analysis Essay. That's just lame. And again, I understand people weren't aware of it necessarily, but always in academia, create your own title. Don't call it what the name of the assignment is, okay? And we had some good titles from people. There was one title was The Consequences of Quantity Over Quality, The Consequences of Industrial Interference with an Organic System. I'm forgetting another funny title that I laughed out loud at when I was reading. It was something about corn cob horror or something, and now I can't remember. It was really funny, but titles are the first things readers see. It's the first thing that grabs their attention, grabs their interest. So make it interesting. Okay. Next, remember for this assignment, and each assignment's different. I usually will specify, but I wanted 6 paragraphs total. That means 4 body paragraphs. We do this so that you're not writing a 5-paragraph essay. Because that's not a length of college essays. That's a short essay. So I start off with a 6-paragraph essays. They generally get longer, but that will always be the minimum. So you should have 4 body paragraphs. This helps you move away from another thing I want to talk about, which is your thesis statements. It helps you move away from that preview thesis where you list each topic. And that only works in a 5-paragraph essay, because once you start writing longer essays, you can't list every topic in your thesis. It's just going to be this long, chunky list that will be silly. Right? So instead of having a preview thesis where you list your topics, have a unified thesis where you have one central focus. That doesn't mean you can't hint at or mention, different aspects of your essay, but try to avoid that kind of list of topics. Okay, so 6 paragraphs total. Remember, for your body paragraphs, I always ask for 2 quotations per body paragraph. It's a good rule of thumb for academic essays. That's a good amount of evidence. Sometimes you may put in 3, but stick to, 2's a good number. It makes for a chunkier body paragraph. This way, you want your body paragraphs to be developed in academic essays. They are developed because you are using enough evidence, and you're also explaining enough, okay? And that's another thing I was going to mention is So 2 quotations per body paragraph, 4 body paragraphs for this essay. Make sure you look at those requirements on the essay assignment sheets. The other thing with quotations, when you use them, or any evidence, statistics, or a paraphrase, make sure you explain why that's important. What does that evidence show about your topic sentence, about your point, and about your larger point, your thesis overall? How does it add to your argument? Okay, don't just plop them down and assume your reader is going to know what you're saying, why you're using that. You need to explain that to them. Part of that also is don't end your paragraphs with a quotation because you need to explain it. You don't want to end with someone else's words in general. You want to end with your words. This is your argument. Every essay except for the summary is your argument. So make it yours. Okay? So explain your quotations always. And again, don't assume your reader's going to understand or that you're over-explaining. It's better to over-explain than to not explain enough. Okay? As far as format, most people are doing pretty well. Don't forget headers, right? In the upper right, your last name and a page number on each page. And watch your extra space. I think everybody's got the double spacing down. Watch when you put extra space, though. If it's happening every time you hit return, in your document, you're noticing that the space is a little bigger than the double spaced, and you can measure, on your page or on the computer screen, you can actually use a ruler and measure how big that is and see if you're doing that. If you're getting extra space after you press enter, that means that you have it set or it's preset to add in extra space every time you hit enter. Word does this sometimes because when you're writing business writing, you don't tab the first line of each paragraph. So you need that extra space so that a reader knows, here's a new paragraph. Okay, so you can go in where you select line spacing, double or single. There's another box that says after, and make sure that's set to 0. That tells your the software that every time you hit enter, it's going to put in whatever extra space that box is telling it to. So tell it to not put extra space, put in 0. Okay, and then again, right around titles, no extra space. From the start of the document to the end, it's all double spaced, no extra space. The next thing. In your introduction, remember, I explicitly state what you need to do in your introduction, right? You need to introduce the book and the author. You need to give a brief summary of the whole book. You then need to introduce the topics that specific topic that Pollan talks about that you're going to respond to. Then introduce your own topics and then get to your thesis statement. Okay, make sure for the thesis statement that it responds to the prompt, right? The prompt here was, what one thing you see, or what specific thing do you see in the industrial system that shows, right, that theme of the logic of nature versus the logic of industry. You don't have to explicitly use, those words, the logic of nature versus the logic of industry, in your thesis statement. A lot of the more successful essays mentioned that in the introduction as they were leading in right to their topics. They said this is what Pollan focuses on in this first section a lot, is the logic of nature versus the logic of industry. That worked really well for them. So and then that also kept them focused in their thesis statement on, I need to show this in some way. Okay, so it can be implicit in your thesis. It doesn't have to be explicit where you say, this is one way Pollan shows the logic of nature versus the logic of industry, but that's the focus. So make sure you're responding to that in your thesis. Okay, we're responding to the prompt. Also make sure that your thesis has a so what, right? Okay, CAFOs are bad for cattle. Well, so what? We're going to eat them anyway. So what? What's the bigger point, right? Give us a so what that leads us on, that makes us go, ooh, I want to read this, rather than going, well, yeah, sure, I know CAFOs are bad for cattle. Okay, so a so what? Then the next part of that is, remember that your topic sentences are mini thesis statements. They're just more specific, right? But you're still making an argument. You're making a claim. So don't ask questions. Don't state a fact. Don't state what Pollan says. This is your point. This is your argument. Okay, so make them make a point, make them make an argument, make them make a claim. Okay, think about it as, ask yourself the question for each topic sentence, what's one reason my thesis is true? right? What do I need to show? What's one point to help prove my thesis is true? Okay. So topic sentences. The next thing, okay, I said this already. Explain your evidence. Sorry. For this essay, I did say you could use one outside source. Okay, you could have used King Corn. You know, again, that if you didn't watch that, it does have really good information to supplement what Pollen says and complement what Pollen says. But don't use so many outside sources. Don't use more than one for that essay. That essay, right, this essay is an analysis essay. I want you to spend most of the time showing what Pollen says and how you see this theme of the logic of nature versus the logic of industry. So don't use a bunch of outside sources. It ends up with you not focusing on Pollen enough, and that's what your task is for this assignment, okay? So one outside source is fine, but you should be focused on Pollen. Also, when you bring up outside sources, just like in the introduction, when you bring up, right, when you initially bring up Michael Pollan and his book, whenever you bring up an outside source, by and large, it's a good idea to tell us the name of that author and the title of the work, okay, that you're pulling from. Sometimes, you know, you can just use a quote and not have that information, especially in other disciplines. In English, I'd argue it's a good idea. Bring up the name of the source, bring up the author, give us a brief summary of what that source is about, and then, right, and then, you know, as you lead into your quotation, you can give us context for that quotation. But that helps it be a little smoother rather than just being abruptly, oh, wait, where are these words coming from? Who's saying this? What's the context? Why is it here? All right, so try to lead into that a little more. Also with, right, and this leads to using quotations. Again, remember, right, 2 quotations per body paragraph is my general rule. But remember to introduce and cite your quotations. This is very important. Don't drop quotations. A dropped quotation is when a quotation is just sitting there on its own. The sentence starts with a quotation mark and ends with a quotation mark and maybe a citation, right? You don't want to do that. You want to introduce the quotation. There's 3 different ways to do it. Go back over the quotations pages if you need a review. You are perfectly fine just using signal verbs to do it. So, Pollen says, comma, quotation. Okay? That's it. Pollen argues. Pollen reasons, Pollen asserts, Pollen illustrates, right? Again, you have a list of signal verbs to choose from. It's a super simple way to introduce quotations. You can get away with just using a signal verb to introduce quotations the rest of your college career. That's fine, but introduce your quotations. And then remember to cite page numbers, right? If you use a signal verb, Pollen says, you don't need to put Pollen's name in the parenthetical citation, just a page number. If you lead into the quotation in a different way, like integrating it into your own sentence or using a colon with a full sentence before that to introduce the quotation, you might then need to use, right, Pollen's last name and a page number. Okay, but remember to cite and remember to introduce your quotations. Also, sorry, when you're introducing, sorry, and this is out of order now, but when you're introducing sources, so even the Omnivore's Dilemma, remember the titles of longer works, like books, full-length books like Pollen's, okay, are italicized. Make sure you italicize. That tells us, right, importantly, this is a full-length work. If it's a shorter work, like a section from Pollen's book or a chapter, okay, or an article in a magazine, an article in a newspaper, a singular poem, a singular short story, a song, right, titles of those shorter works are put in quotation marks. So the quotation marks and the italics tell a reader this is a longer work, this is a shorter work. Make sure you denote, right, the length of the work through the use of quotation marks and italics. So again, right, The Omnivore's Dilemma, A Natural History of 4 Meals, which is the full title. You should always introduce a book for the first time with a full title. That is in italics. Okay, but if you are introducing or mentioning, right, industrial corn as a section of the book, that is in quotation marks. And the last thing, good work overall on your essays. Was really happy. I thought one of the biggest challenges would just be making sure that people were reading the work, reading the book, and engaging. But everyone seems to really be engaging with the text, and making pretty good arguments all in all. Okay. Well, there were some problems that some people had. I think everybody was really engaging with the text, and everybody